In this video, I'm going to walk through in detail the new viral fat loss formula that is currently sweeping the internet. And so this formula is based upon science, and in today's video, I'm going to explain it in detail with my client Darren. So we're going to go through not only his starting weight, finding his starting macros, how we did a metabolic priming phase into a cutting phase, and then I'm going to walk you through the transformation step by step and answer a ton of questions that my channel currently has on how this is possible. So if you guys don't know me by now, my name's Adam Bonnell. I'm an online fat loss professional, and I specialize in metabolic priming, which is a process of metabolism manipulation. So I've currently worked with 200 clients in the past 6 months in 7 different countries using this exact formula. And it works every single time because it's a predictable formula. It's a scientific process of using KPI, data, and metrics to get men lean. And so in today's video, I'm going to be answering a ton of the questions that are currently coming in from a lot of our subscribers today. And you guys have been killing it with the videos, but today I'm just going to lay everything out for free in general, just to help each and every single one of you guys out in your fat loss journey. So getting right into the video, the first thing I want to cover is Darren's transformation. So obviously Darren got pretty dang lean, and I want you actually to get a chance to listen to Darren for himself, because today we did a testimonial with Darren, so I want to share with you a clip of it so you can kind of understand the concept of what we do and know that this is the real deal.
Swear to God, I thought Adam was a scam, dude. Like it
was actually impressive how shredded that you did get.
I've never seen anything like this before. My mind has been blown. I never imagined that you could literally work out less and eat more and just retrain your metabolism. Like Adam's program is really the only thing that's helped me get shredded, Not easy, the program works. If you're interested in feeling better, in losing weight, being more confident in your appearance, and also if you want to, be more athletic to serve your family better and have more energy, yeah, 100%. Dude, I've already recommended this program to 2 of my friends. No, I appreciate you, man. I could talk about this program for a lot longer, man. It's been a really life-changing program, honestly.
And so, yeah, obviously Darren is a great testimonial to the extent of what we do from a metabolic level. And I'm going to explain to you in detail, because we got a lot of guys who watch my channel, a lot of my subscribers that are actually getting into the program as of this week. And so I'm really excited to get to work with some of the new guys. But if you guys are interested and you're kind of currently stuck in a fat loss plateau but want to get to an elite level body composition this summer, there's going to be a link in this description, and you can go ahead and check out some of the client testimonials, the transformations, and you can sign up for a time in that link as well. We'll walk through the program. I'll walk you through XYZ, how we do this with each and every single one of our clients, and we'll see if it's a good fit for you to join the program. But anyways, let's get down to the actual business today, because I want to share you guys in general just the whole concept of how we do what we do. So anyways, Darren came to me at a starting body weight of 152, right? And so here is his starting weight on November 4th at 152. And so the background behind Darren is he sent us a Google Doc of his information. He feels like he is working out too intense and too much. Every day his body feels broken down. He only eats about 1,800 calories a day, can't back squat because of knee issues, and wants to look lean and get abs. So this is kind of where Darren had started. As you can see, he sent us a kind of little bit of a description on kind of where he was at. Same routine, not allowing to maintain my physique. It's just slowly drifted since 2020. The days that you see me here trying to get back on track, follow the eating schedule above with no result. And a lot of our guys do come to us in that specific position with one, trying keto, trying carnivore, and all these other fad diets that aren't really working. But within this program, what we do is we train your metabolism from a more scientific level. And I want to explain in detail, first of all, how we got his starting macros, because as you could see, his starting macros were right around 1,800. He'd been eating 1,800 for a while. When he got into the program, we kind of did a background check on him to kind of see where his overall macronutrients were. And this is kind of where we got, right? We got he was at 234 protein, 156 carb, 76 fat. And then on this day right here, he was 226, 161, and 100. So my first thoughts right off the bat is okay, so Darren is currently eating 100 grams of fat, and he's also eating pretty good amount of protein, okay? So what we do from a more scientific level is something called carbohydrate metabolism, which is an adaptive state to where the body utilizes carbohydrates as its main fuel source. And if you hyper-focus the body to using one specific fuel source, you know where to take calories away from because you know where the energy is being allocated. So like right here, the one thing I knew we need to do with Darren is get this fat goal down and actually lower the protein goal a little bit, because there is a detrimental effect to overconsumption of protein. At a certain point, there is a diminishing return of protein. So we actually had to lower that protein a little bit as well, because I get it. Like, you know, a lot of the guys who watch my channel, you're probably the same way. It's like you've been taught protein, but like after a certain, you know, gram of protein, there is a return, not a return on investment to the amount of protein that you're actually eating. So how we got his starting macros was like this. One, we took his protein goal and we took his body weight times 1.2. So typically our clients start at a 1 to 1.2 times their body weight. So obviously Darren was eating 225. So we wanted to start him off at the higher range. If he was eating, let's say, you know, maybe 150 grams of protein, we might have started him closer to that 150 mark. But since he was over consuming already on protein, we just simply dialed it back to the 1.2 range. And then the big change, and one of the biggest changes of his entire program, was the fat goal, right? You can see his fat goal was at 75 and then at 100 on one day as well. That is well over consuming on fat, because when you understand the macromolecule of fat controls a lot of digestions, and it also controls a lot of hormones. And so like the overconsumption of fat will lead to lack of digestion in general, but also overconsuming overall calories, because fat has an overall 9 calorie per gram as opposed to the other two, which have a 4 calorie per gram. So what we did was we took Darren's fat goal and we diminished it to 0.3, right? So his body weight times 0.3. So he came to about 45 grams of fat. I actually rounded that up to 50, just overdoing this as long as I have been. I know that we can probably start Darren around 50 grams of fat. And if this is something that, one, you're kind of wondering, do you have a question on, I would start with in a little bit higher, right? Maybe in the 50 to 60 gram range. Obviously, Darren's 152, and so starting at 50 is pretty well on the dot for him. But like, I usually try to start my clients at like an even number, 50 or 60. But obviously, since he's at 152, you know, 0.3 times his body weight is 45, so we're going to start him at 50. Then we take the rest and we fill the rest of the carbs to meet 2,000. So as you can see right here, one, he was already over-consuming at 2,200, and on this day, 2,400. So what we want to do is we want to take his calories and we want to start low and we want to work through his starting macros, okay? So we wanted to start him off at 2,000 calories. So we had him right here before he actually joined at 1,800, and the 2 days before he actually joined the program when he was tracking, he was at 22 to 24. So we wanted to kind of start a little bit lower than he had already been tracking, but also a little bit higher than he was previously. So we started right in that kind of middle ground, right between 1,800 and 22 and 24. So we want to start right at that 2,000 grams or 2,000 calorie range. And what we did with that is his starting calories. So now we have a starting protein, we have a starting fat, and we have a starting calories. So what do we do with carbohydrates? So we backfill the rest to meet the caloric amount, right? So this is how it works, right? So protein times 4 is 700. Fat times 9 is 450. So why we use 4 and 9 is because this is the actual calories per gram. So 9 calories per gram for fat, 4 calories per gram for protein. So 700, and then we got 450. So these are the current caloric amounts of protein and fats. And so now we took 2,000 calories minus the current caloric value for protein, current caloric value for fat, and we got 850. So we took 850 and we divided that by 4, because every calorie of carbohydrate is 4 grams. We got started off right at 212 carbs. I would probably typically start them right at 200. That just makes logical sense for me. I usually try to use increments of 25. So like 200 and then, 225, 250, 275. So I usually try to use increments of 25 grams just for an overall just better adherence and just understanding. Like for instance, 100 grams of jasmine rice is like 25 grams of carbs. It just makes the whole process easier and easier to follow. So where we got a starting macronutrients was 175 protein, 200 carb, and 50 fat. Okay, so now we got a starting macronutrients. Okay, well, how do we prime his metabolism? Which is the biggest question I get throughout my entire channel, because you guys, are really interested in how I do what I do with all of my clients. But I want to first of all explain it in a sense, and then I'm going to actually show you how it works. Okay, so For Darren, he was actually doing a pretty good amount of cardio when he came to us. He was doing almost 50 minutes of cardio. His calories were at 1,800, and he had plateaued out for the last 10 years almost. So we knew that his BMR was probably pretty shot, because what a metabolic adaptation is your body adapting to the current amount of calories that you're currently eating, and you no longer having effect. And this comes in a sense of finding your maintenance calories, because people think maintenance calories is something you can just search on the internet. It's not. Your maintenance calories is subject to what you've already been doing. So he had already been eating 1,800 calories for a very long time, and he had plateaued. So logically, we know that his BMR had probably shot because he had metabolically adapted to those calories. So we knew his BMR was shot. So the first thing we did was we actually cut all of his cardio. Why we wanted to do that is because we wanted to reduce inflammation. We would reduce inflammation on his body and get his body back to level. So, and we started him off with 0 minutes of cardio, but 10K steps, okay? So why we do steps, and we started him off with 10K steps right here. Why we do steps is because steps is a form of low intensity cardio that is non-inflammatory on the body, and it also helps with the reduction of lactate, okay? So we start them off with 10K steps. I know this like drawing right here is a terrible, but anyways, we start them off with 10K steps, and we cut his cardio to 0, because one, we understand like the fat and kind of how much fat he was eating. We know that he probably needs to have some optimization of overall digestion. Well, cardio, one, it will reduce, it will induce a lot of cortisol on your body. We need to reduce that. And how do we reduce that? We start with steps, and also steps help with digestion and getting food to move a little bit faster along the digestive tract. So start out with no cardio, just 10K steps a day, 1,800 calories. So the logic of what we're trying to do right here is we're trying to slowly increase his carbohydrates, by 25. And I'll show you exactly step by step how we did it with Darren in particular. But like, we're trying to improve the actual way that the body is adapting to carbohydrates. And so like, for instance, if you just take your caloric value right now and just go to maintenance and say we were to start Darren at 2,500 calories and we were about to start him at 300 carb, he would gain weight really fast because the body is not adapted to those carbohydrates yet. You have to slowly introduce carbohydrates into your diet and know when to change them. And I'll show you kind of logically how I know when to change them. But anyways, what we do is we slowly start to work these up each week. And then logically, as our body starts to adapt and metabolic adaptation starts to occur, we start to raise this bar, right? We start to raise this bar simultaneously with the food intake. So for Darren, we got him right around 2,700 calories, and we finally had optimized his BMR. And I'll show you what it looks like when you should probably start your cut and like with the top end of the metabolic priming phase when we go through Darren's transformation. But now that we have 2,600 calories to work with Darren, we're doing no cardio, and we've optimized his BMR, what we'll do next is go into an actual cutting phase. And so now the purpose of the cutting phase is that we have all of these calories to work with, and we have a new stimulus of cardio that your body has adapted to, right? So like, let's say for instance that in the metabolic priming phase that we were to start Darren off at 20 minutes. So as soon as we optimize Darren's metabolism, if we were to go into a cutting phase, we would immediately have to start with 30. Why? Is because his body had adapted to 20. So we want his body in the metabolic priming phase to adapt to 0 so we have a new stimulus. And so what we did is we simply raised the minutes of cardio and we lowered a little bit of calories. And so as the time goes on, you go into a just normal cutting phase, we know metabolic adaptation will start to occur. That's this logic from a scientific sense. And so like you'll see in Darren's step by step and day by day, week by week, the ways that we actually changed his macronutrients, but we ended up getting him back down pretty low. But obviously he got extremely, extremely shredded. And there'll be days that we can kind of tell that cortisol is a little bit high, inflammation can be kind of reduced, and we'll give him like carbohydrate refeeds to momentarily spike his BMR, and then we can utilize all of this cardio that we can work with because it all has a newfound stimulus, and we can utilize all of those resources to get him as lean as possible. We call it arming the tool belt. If we have all this cardio that we have to work with and all these calories, think about how much we can actually drop from. So like, let's say for instance, clients come, like Darren comes to us like, I want to get lean, I want to go into a cutting phase. And he's at 1800 calories and his BMR is already tanked, right? So we would be working against his BMR, trying to push through this cardio with not enough calories to reduce any of the actual lactate and inflammation that's currently happening within his body. And we're kind of capped. So what we have to do is we have to optimize before we actually start the cutting phase. And this is what we do right here. We optimize the current calorie amount, optimize the current cardio, optimize the BMR. And so now we have all of this to work with, right? We have all of this to work with, and we have an optimized BMR, and that's how we get our clients predictably as lean as possible. And it's quite amazing too when you start to look at our clients' transformations, because he did start at 152, and we started to raise his calories all the way to 2,600. And you kind of notice right here how he kind of drops a little bit, kind of spikes back up a little bit, but then just drops way, way, way back down to 139. So what's happening right here is that one, we could, in a sense, right within the first couple of weeks, we optimize digestion. Our clients will probably lose about 10 to 15 pounds. Then once we hit the bottom end, we start to add those calories and carbohydrates back. And what happens is we actually start to build muscle tissue right in this range. And then once we start the cut right here, then we have all of this that actually starts to come off and the body just shreds in body fat. But to make this make more logical sense, I'm going to walk you through step by step how we did this with Darren, and then we're going to actually go through the kind of key concepts of how to stay within your fat goal, because I think that's probably the biggest thing my clients do struggle with is staying under a fat goal, okay? So this is where Darren started with us on 11-4, all right? And so within the first week, we immediately raised his carbohydrates, and you can see I raised that fat to 50 right here. We immediately raised his carbohydrates 25, right? Next week, he checked in, and he is already leaner, right? Look at his lower back and look at his side shot. Look how much cortisol actually started to reduce within him in his body. And let me put these like a little bit more side by side for you guys to see. But look in these 2 weeks right here, how much cortisol actually released within his body. That's with more carbohydrates. And so as we start to see his body adapt, we actually had a new low weigh-in for him right here. So we knew that we could give him more carbohydrates. So the key data points that we look in when each of our clients check in each week is energy, obviously body composition, weight, fatigue, and muscle tissue. So all these key data points correlate to what we should be doing from a logical sense next within our clients' plans. So like for instance, Darren checked in at a lower weight this week. So we knew, okay, he's good to get more carbohydrates. But it's not always the case. It's not always so black and white like that, because let's say that he checks in 1 week and he's up in weight, but his body composition is leaner. Logically, what happened? He's gaining muscle tissue, right? Because, there's a difference between weight loss and fat loss, and my clients come to us for fat loss to get to a lean body composition. And if you're trying to just lose weight, you're going to lose muscle tissue. So we optimize for fat loss. So it's not always about the scale at the end of the day. And so the same thing applies. And so notice how these weeks that we actually start to raise his calories, raise his carbohydrates ever so slightly, and he starts to lean out. And so even some of our clients are busy individuals, fathers, business owners, managers. They travel. They like to go on vacation. So December 19th or 18th, he went on vacation, and we wrote him a plan to help him maintain vacation. But that's more specific to each client, individual, and customizations that come with the actual program. But for instance, look on the 12/28 when he checked in after his actual vacation. He actually leaned out even more because we gave him a good vacation plan for sustainability. So anyways, when he came back from vacation, I think this is really important as well that I want you guys to understand. I actually lowered his fat 10 post-vacation. So why did I do that? It's because typically when you're on vacation, you overconsume on fat intake, and I lowered his fat intake just 10 for him to optimize a little bit of digestion, right? And so that will clear up some digestion, make the digestive tract a little bit quicker, and you will lean out faster right after vacation. But we don't need to go back after vacation and just ramp up cardio and drop calories tremendously, because we're trying to have our bodies metabolically adapt. And so after we got back from vacation, we lowered the fat a little bit, and then we got right back to work with adding those calories and adding those macronutrients, okay? So as time goes on, 25 more grams of carbohydrates, and then this is where we start to really see what it kind of looks like we're at top end of a metabolic priming phase. So I want you guys to see the difference between this photo and this photo, right? from a logical sense, we can kind of see his body gain a little bit of water retention. So the key concepts to know when you start an actual cutting phase after a metabolic priming phase is like you'll see a slight water retention, a slight weight spike, and typically right at your weight times 18 in calories. So his weight was at 145 times 18, which is right at 2,700 calories. There's a caveat behind this because like it's not always so black and white with everybody, right? But like that's in a typical sense when our clients get to like 18 times their body weight in calories, when I start to look at these little nuances, right? Like the water retention and weight spike. But like you can see very visually right here within this week and this week, how much he actually, you see a slight water retention spike. And that's how you know it's like, okay, we've hit the top of the BMR, right? So what do we do next? We immediately lowered 75 grams of carbohydrates to start the really fat loss phase, to really get the fat loss phase actually going. And so what we did next is the same thing that I actually explained to you above. We actually lowered 25 grams of carbohydrates as the weeks gone on, and we raised actually the minutes of cardio. So Darren, for instance, we used a customized form of cardio that would actually fit into his plan a little bit better. Typically we'll start with like 4 days of 25 minutes of cardio, and then we'll scale per session, then times per week. But Darren was the type of situation where he wanted to use a weekly minutes. And so we use weekly minutes for Darren to scale up his cardio. But the importance of that in general to understand like the cardio we gave for him, because he was doing like more HIIT style training and like kind of, heart rate range zones of cardio. And the importance of that is that like we can do type of things like that with our clients, but it has to be trackable so we can scale it, right? Because if we're just doing cardio at a numerous amount that we don't know, then how are we supposed to scale? Because what can be tracked can be improved. So we had him do 120 minutes of the cardio of his choice, and we were able to scale that actually per week. And then as time goes on, he went to 22 to 2,100 calories, and you can start to really, really see how he starts to really, really lean out right here. And then we lowered food again. And then right here, we actually gave him 150 gram carbohydrate refeed. So I want you to kind of see what happens between these two photos, right? Notice on this photo on 326 and on this photo the next week, how our side shot kind of spiked a little bit in overall kind of leanness. And what that is typically is a little bit of cortisol induced on the body. And so these are the type of nuances that you want to look at when you're looking at clients' plans, because these are the things that kind of tell us, okay, like we could use a carbohydrate refeed just for the overall cortisol that our body is accruing as of right now, because carbohydrates reduce cortisol. They reduce stress on the body. They reduce psychosomatic stress, psychological stress, and bodily stress as well. And so I could tell right here, okay, let's give you 150 gram carbohydrate refeed, and look what happens the next week after this refeed. Boom. Absolutely lean, right? Because we had spiked his BMR and then we dropped the food right after. So this is important to know. And I want you to understand this concept really well, is that reason why we refeed clients and then drop their carbohydrates right after, because basically we spike the BMR, and psychologically from a scientific perspective, the body thinks that it is getting more food. For the course of the next 3 to 4 days, your body's BMR will actually, consume and start burning a little bit better within the next few days. And so we actually drop those carbohydrates after the refeed. We can get a crazy body composition effect and new lows as well. And that's where, we got this body composition change right here. And then what we did on this day is that we actually raised his food. We got him back out of that deficit, that 1,800 calorie deficit that he was in. And we actually, on this day, gave him 10 more grams of fat and 50 grams of carbohydrates and got him to 2,100 calories. And I want you to check out what happens when we pull back cardio, we add more food, and we actually implement a lot of stress reduction on the body. One, because like if you take this photo to right here, typically like just logically you're like, okay, the carbohydrates made a huge difference. The carbohydrates are a huge, lever pull as of right now within this client's plan. So what we did is we pulled back a little bit. We added a little bit of fat to hold that weight a little bit more. And look what happens within the next just 2 weeks of us pulling back. He absolutely got shredded and his side shots. And that's how we made this, body composition change. And it's very calculated, right? Is understanding what to change, when to change it, and why. But from a high level concept, this is what I want you to understand. You got to start at starting macronutrients. Work carbohydrates weekly into your plan, 25 grams incrementally. Look at your body composition photos, look at your weight, your actual energy levels, your actual fatigue, and your actual tissue that you're growing if you're getting stronger, and then make changes based upon that. Do not make changes based upon body scale, because like for me as a high-level coach, the fourth tracker of progress for me is the scale, because I really don't care what my clients weigh. They come to me to look a certain way. So like, what I look at, physical body composition, that's always first. Next, muscle tissue. Are we growing? And then 3, like, is our energy levels improving? Because if our energy levels are improving, that means our non-energy activity thermogenesis is high. And then the 4th is like the scale. But anyways, like, you got to understand that one, to bring those up, and then to understand when you're kind of at that peak moment of the metabolic priming phase. And this is the kind of key telltale. So like the main things that our clients actually struggle with on more of like a tactical basis is like how to keep the protein high and not go over on fat intake. Because what we do use is a high protein, high carbohydrate, low fat diet. And it's not like we use a zero fat diet. You need fats in your diet, because if you underconsume on fats, you will continue to still have digestion and hormone issues, but a calculated amount of fat to regulate hormone levels and to regulate metabolism. And so the hardest thing for all of my clients is to just stay under that fat goal and hit our protein goal. So the 3 things I make our clients do is track your day of eating the night before or the morning of, so you have a plan. So for Darren, being at 175 protein, 200 carbs, 60 fat, what I told him, I was like, dude, sit down the night before and just log what you're gonna eat the next day. Move some things around to hit those macronutrients as closely as possible. That's gonna leave a lot less stress on the table, first of all, but also it's gonna help you because you just have a plan to follow instead of making the plan up as you go. Next is tracking in grams and ounces to get closer to that 1 to 3 gram mark on the dot. Grams and ounces will allow you to be a little bit more granular. Ounces usually for just cooked meat, and like that's the next thing is like weighing out dense meat as cooked. But like tracking ounces for your meats and tracking grams for everything else, because that'll allow you to get a lot more granular on the actual per gram per ounce and in the grams of carbohydrates, protein, fats that actually correlated to the meal. So tracking grams and ounces, and then like this is just a list that we share with our clients on high protein, low fat foods like chicken breast, any white meat, because typical rule of thumb is the whiter the meat, the leaner the meat. And like all of these foods are really good. So if you want to save this video, you want to screenshot some of these as well. These are beautiful meals, beautiful food. But anyways, like the moderate fat, high protein is still good too. It's not that we want to stay away from this, but like obviously these are going to have a little bit more fat intake. And so we want to moderate the amount of these like dark meats, because typically the biggest thing I see and the biggest thing that guys come to me with is like they are over consuming on fat. And typically it's typically usually the guys like who are a big red meat eaters, the dark meat eaters. And those are the guys that we kind of have to train, like, okay, we don't need to stay away from all this high fat protein, but we need to moderate it, right? And so it's understanding the how much, because like if you guys are tracking right now and you don't have the correct goal, you don't have the correct amount, it doesn't even matter if you're tracking at all. So like what we do is we sit down and we scientifically measure out how much protein, carbs, and fats that you need to be eating, because if you're not eating with the correct actual goal, protein, carbs, and fats, then it doesn't mean anything at all. So like this is how we teach our clients to do it. And the formulas that I use with each and every single one of my clients. So if you are somebody who wants to get into a high level program and you need the extra help and you're tired of being stuck, tired of spinning your wheels, and you want to predictably get to the best body composition you have ever been in this summer, the link will be below. A lot of you subscribers right now listening to this are jumping in the program. I love it. I love you guys. And I always tell you guys who do get in the community that we run that like you guys are the best to work with, because the guys on my YouTube channel, subscribers to my YouTube channel, you guys are the best. So if you have been watching my video for a while and you want to get to the next level physique, sign up for a time. There's going to be a link in the description, and I'm going to walk you through exactly how we did it for Darren, but more customized to you. We'll navigate, vacations, navigate work trips, we'll navigate everything in general and customize something that's for you, but is going to actually get you to the next level physique in an actual predictable way. So if you're struggling and like now is the time, like you're like, this is the time of my life, I will get in the best shape I have ever been, sign up for the time down below, take the jump, and me and my team will be happy to catch you. So I will see you guys soon, and make sure to like, comment, subscribe, because we are posting new videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I love the subscribers, and I love you guys who watch my channel. So like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon.